From UFOs to psychic powers and government conspiracies, history is riddled with unexplained events. You can turn back now or learn the stuff they don't want you to know. A production of iHeartRadio.
Hello, welcome back to the show. My name is Matt.
My name is Noel.
They call me Ben. We are joined with our super producer, Max Freight Train Williams. Most importantly, you are here, and that makes this the stuff they don't want you to know. It is the top of the week. We're reaching the very end of 2022. Congratulations, everybody. If you, like so many, have had a tough year, just know we're almost done with it. We're almost to the next one, and as always, we have your back. So much stuff has happened. There are robots who are out to get you in San Francisco. Black holes are going crazy. Entire monasteries or temples, rather, in Thailand are getting vacated because the monks just can't stop doing meth. And
meth monks.
And that might be a show all its own in the future, honestly,
Sure.
Guys. But
Like our producer's moniker, the freight trains might be stopping soon.
Right. And that could be its own episode as well. Just the tricky things that Uncle Sam has put in place for certain industries to prevent unions, not just rails, but the airlines as well. Before all of that, though, there's something very important we want to talk to you about that is going to be of special interest to anyone, whether you use the internet or not. And while it's of interest to everyone, it is going to be critical information if you are one of our listeners who happens to reside in the United States and pay taxes.
Yeah, because you got to pay your taxes. And a lot of Americans nowadays are using e-filing services to do those taxes rather than, going to somebody down the street who's going to do your taxes for you, having an accountant, the way I know my parents used to do it until my dad did the accounting for us. But e-filing is the thing now. It doesn't mean every American does it, but there are around 150 million Americans that file their taxes online nowadays. That's a lot of us. And a lot of us use the same services. There are some very popular ones out there.
TaxSlayer.
TaxSlayer was a big one. I used that once or twice, I know for sure.
Because the name sounds cool, right? Like it comes to a point where you just pick the one that has the most sexy commercial, right?
Maybe, but to do your taxes, I feel like there's a different calculation there. Maybe I don't need the most metal name. Maybe I just need the one that seems the most reliable.
And yet you use TaxSlayer a couple of times. I'm just putting it out there. Just putting it out there.
There's also TurboTax. That's a big one. Free tax. There's
Tax Act,
which I think you mentioned, Matt. There's also there's a ton of these things that have been, I don't know, like it's weird and it doesn't make sense that taxes should be so complicated in the United States, but that's as we'll see, a lot of that comes from these sweetheart deals historically that have occurred between the government and private industry. That's why, like, if you go on irs.gov when it's time to pay the taxman, then what you'll see is that, depending on your state as well, if we're not talking federal taxes, it almost seamlessly leads you to a different thing that is a private thing, right? It can actually be kind of a pain to navigate around not using those things now. And as a matter of fact, I don't know if we'll get popped for saying this, but companies like TurboTax spend a lot of money lobbying to keep it that way, because it's a business that has a steady demand every year.
Yeah, it does grow. It is growing. And we know a lot about this because we worked for a company that also owned TaxAct for a while.
That's the one. Mm-hmm.
Not anymore. just for a while there. So I think it was a holding company that they diversified and they bought a podcast / website company. That was us. But anyway, the reason why we're talking about this today is because when you have that interaction, when you file your taxes, it's really between you and the government. Really, those are the two major entities. All your financial information that you have to give to the government by law, and then they have all that information, and then they decide how many taxes you need to pay more or how much you need to get back from them because you paid too much. When you bring an accountant into the situation, that third party, in a way, but not in the same way, acts like an attorney, right? It's just a medium through which that information travels, but it doesn't get disseminated anywhere.
And, a lot of those services have little upcharge things that you can do that will allow them or give you the option of having them defend you in the event of an audit. Or there's some extra, not protection exactly, but if you are audited, there's a thing that you pay extra for where they will kind of interface with the IRS in the event of an audit.
Oh, dudes, please, design nerds, fellow conspiracy realists, talk to us about dark patterns in UX. That's a huge thing. There's a great ProPublica article called Inside TurboTax's 20-Year Fight to Stop Americans from Filing Their Taxes for Free. But that's only one part of the income stream.
Well, yeah, I feel like it's one of those things sort of like buying extra insurance for a U-Haul or something, or buying ticket protection for your Ticketmaster. It's like one of those things where if you're a little bit of a nervous Nelly, you might do that, but typically you don't need it. But you might need it. Better to have it in case you need it. But it's just a good way of having an extra revenue stream for people that, maybe aren't as savvy.
And not to derail us, Matt, but I think we're getting to revenue streams, right?
Yes, that's exactly where we're going. We're getting to what information you give, your personal financial information, what you give and where it's supposed to go, right? That's the first thing. In order to get it there securely and safely, maybe you use TaxAct or TaxSlayer or H&R Block's online services, and you trust that that information is going to get there accurately and safely to the government, that is. And in order to do that, you have to pay them money. That's one of the primary ways that these companies, these third-party tax filers, make money. You pay $25 to $100, sometimes more, depending on which package you choose, because they've all got different packages of what you get. And when you do that, again, the company is making money every time somebody files taxes. And again, we're talking about 150 million plus individual returns that are filed. So that's a lot of moolah. But one of the other things you can do, another revenue stream that you could get for this, is kind of roundabout. It's a little weird because it's not necessarily a revenue stream at first. It's a way to get your name out as a company that wants to file your taxes. And that is to put out Facebook ads or meta ads, I guess, but on Facebook and Instagram and all their other platforms. So a company like TaxAct, let's say, would pay Facebook / Meta money to put TaxAct all over the place so that people would know, oh, I can file my taxes through this company. What Meta also offers, Facebook first and then it became Meta, is this thing called the Pixel. It's now known.
Everybody join in at home. I don't care if you're in the car. Boo. The Pixel is very bad. Yes.
It is a tracking thing.
Bad.
It's called Meta Pixel. It was known as Facebook Pixel. It's a piece of code that you can add into your website, your app, whatever it is, that is the landing place for that Facebook ad that you posted, right? On Meta, one of Meta's platforms. So somebody clicks on an ad within Facebook, they get sent to the TaxAct website. Now Pixel knows if it's on the TaxAct website, it knows who that person is, and it follows how they interact with your website. That's really what it does. It's an analytics machine for people who buy Facebook ads.
So it's like a more elaborate cookie, kind of?
Yeah. A cookie, just being the nifty little thing that tracks your internet activity for advertising or more sinister purposes. The metapixel is like a very, very advanced version of that and much more ubiquitous. Think of like a cookie cake store for anybody who ever did those. It's not doozy. Your average Chips Ahoy is what I'm saying. And it's darn near ubiquitous. It is also completely legal for me to point out that there are a number of great extensions you can get on your browser of choice to throw that pixel off your trail. And I think it's worth the time.
Oh yeah. So there are a couple, this is a bit complicated. We just got to dive in a little bit further here. This is how metapixel is described by Digital Trends in a post that was made not long ago. Quote, once installed, this code shows you how people react to your Facebook ads and keeps track of the interactions your customers or prospective customers have with your websites, such as buying a product on your site. You can then use this information to target your ads toward the prospective customers that are more likely to be interested in your ads and your products in the future. So really, it's just a tool for anybody who has a website that's going to be giving Facebook/Meta money for advertisements.
And not illegal.
Not illegal at all. And the other thing to note here is that this code, you can go right now and download the necessary code and install it on your website, and you don't have to pay Meta a thing. It's free. It's a service.
Want that data, right?
Well, theoretically, you are using it and benefiting from it because you get to see the analytics of the stuff you're paying for, your ads. The question is, what does the stream look like in the other direction? What goes to Meta, right?
Right.
Well, we have an answer, at least from these e-filing tax services. According to themarkup.org, it's an article that was written with The Verge. It's by Simon Fundy Tietler, Angie Walker, and Colin Lecter, Letcher, perhaps. Title is, Tax Filing Websites Have Been Sending Users Financial Information to Facebook. And it was published not long ago on November 22nd of 2022. I highly recommend you read this article, or you read the Verge article that also came out, and there's quite a bit of coverage on this in other places, but I would start probably with the Markup article. You should learn about this.
Yeah, Matt, this gave me some questions because without spoiling the big turn here, what I think we can agree we're seeing is a precedent. And just to set you up here, I'm sure many of us remember how several years ago, a while ago now, something strange started happening with Facebook. People would finally bite the bullet, succumb to the peer pressure, and start their first Facebook account, only to learn there was already a shadow account waiting for them based on the activities and information of people they knew in the real world, or texted or interacted with in some other non-Facebook way, which was spooky, but definitely a precedent.
Yeah, it is weird. You don't even have to, it doesn't even have to be a quote shadow account kind of thing. If you sign up for Meta, like right now, if you got an Oculus or something and you sign up for one of those accounts, it already has your friends loaded up in there because it knows stuff about you. You don't even have to have an account yet, which is really creepy. Oh, God. So let me jump into this article from the Markup, because I'm just going to read a couple of things here verbatim and we can get into it. Quote, major tax filing services such as H&R Block, TaxAct, and TaxSlayer have been quietly transmitting sensitive financial information to Facebook when Americans file their taxes online. The data, sent through widely used code called the metapixel, includes not only information like names and email addresses, but often even more detailed information, including data on users' income, filing status, refund amounts, and dependents' college scholarship amounts.
Dude, that's like serious data. I mean, that stuff's not publicly available, right? Like people's filing status, is it? No. If you're an individual, if you're a corporation, but not if you're an individual.
Well, your marriage status is in a way public knowledge because of the forms you fill out with the county where you're registered and all that stuff.
But like, Trump not giving up his tax documents was a big deal because that stuff's like private.
Well, it was that was a big deal because first he was almost certainly doing sketchy things, but then secondly, there's sort of this, for lack of a better term, a gentleman's agreement that preceding presidents had, where they would appear to look more trustworthy by sharing that publicly. But it's a bad precedent to break. It makes you look really sketchy not to go with that precedent because it should be harmless. This, to the point, is this is dangerous. It's way beyond metadata. Some of it is publicly available, or you can dig into things. Like if you find public figures, there are any number of bot or AI assisted sites that will estimate that person's net worth, right? Those aren't reliable, but they're not illegal either. What's the danger of this information other than, the gross ethical violations, right?
Well, I mean, I guess there are a couple dangers we can get into. I think it's more just an icky thing, right? If Meta has all that information, what does it do to you? Nothing really, because what Meta is using that information for is to further strengthen its algorithms for its ads that these companies are already buying, right? Ultimately, it becomes, in a way, a strengthening of their primary or one of their primary revenue streams over at Meta.
And it makes their ecosystem more attractive to potential advertisers.
It makes you become even more of the product for these companies, right? And you provide the service by using their services that are usually free or, pretty low to file your taxes over at TaxSlayer. I'm going to read one more short paragraph from this article because this is very important. It speaks to what you just said earlier about having an account, Ben. Quote, the information sent to Facebook can be used by the company to power its advertising algorithms and is gathered regardless of whether the person using the tax filing service has an account on Facebook or other platforms operated by Meta.
Mm-hmm.
So it doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter. They will make you a citizen without your consent is another way to think of it. Like the reason some people of Iranian descent are hesitant to travel to Iran because that government might still just consider them a citizen, even if they don't agree to that definition. So if you use these services, the idea is then you are not going to be in control of that information. Matt, I thought it was so interesting the way these different companies did react. Some changed their policies, some made some slick statements.
If I could just double back to clarify, Ben, you're saying you would be beholden to the rules and regulations and perhaps taxation of that country, whether you want to or not.
Yeah, it's even a little bit more extreme because they will physically detain you.
Got it.
Story for another day, but yeah, that's a scary comparison. Facebook is not going to arrest you, I think.
Not yet. The Meta police are not here yet. Very soon they'll have explodable robots, I guess. I don't know. We'll talk about it.
Oh, that's future is now.
All right, guys. I don't want to go too much deeper into this. Just to state that you should be aware of this as a consumer if you're using one of these services to file your taxes, because it's not just Meta that the companies are giving data to. They're also giving similar data, not all the same stuff, but giving it to Google. Because remember, Google is the other major player when it comes to online advertising. Google and Facebook, those are the two.
But Facebook's kind of like, waning a bit in terms of its supremacy. So I would think Google would be more so.
Yeah. And in Google's, at least what the markup found is that in the case of Google, Tax Act was also sending information to them, but it didn't have names attached. So it was just like individual that makes this much money and, with this dependent or whatever. It's still super creepy. You can read a ton more about it. Highly recommend reading the articles because there's a lot and they have been saying different things. H&R Block had an interesting response, but for now, hey, if you want that information, go and find it. It's there. Read the whole thing. Take the time. And I guess we'll all just get ready to do our taxes in a different way next year somehow. I'm not sure.
I can't wait till I'm a billionaire so I don't have to pay taxes. It's such a hassle.
All right, well, we'll take a quick break and consult with our accountants and see you in just a few.
And we have returned. We're staying in the U.S. for this one. This story will take us over to the West Coast, to the beautiful, terrifyingly expensive land of San Francisco. I also want to give a special shout out to fellow conspiracy realist Rage Cage. Rage Cage, you had we were chatting earlier, and Rage has today's award for best spookiest timing because Rage was writing about this story as I was reading stuff about it. So here's the issue. We talked about San Francisco a bit in the past. It is, regardless of whether you love it or hate it, it is a home to some of the biggest innovations in recent history, especially in the world of tech. They love tech over there. It's also a place with a lot of problems, as anybody who can afford to live there can attest, or as anybody who has visited can attest. There's an ongoing controversy about unhoused people. There was also an issue quite recently during the pandemic with refusal to prosecute shoplifters, right? And this was seen as dangerous to a lot of businesses. More importantly, the people who work at those businesses, and got threatened. So there's a new wrinkle that's just happening. I'll give you the big headline now. There are a couple of articles I want to recommend. Let's go to Al Jazeera first, just to shake things up a bit. San Francisco Police Department now officially, as of today, 30th November, 2022, as we record, they have officially voted to give the San Francisco PD the power to use killer robots. This is not hyperbole. Potentially lethal, remote-controlled robots.
Is this like the plot of RoboCop that you're describing here?
Almost.
Almost. Not near as cool. Because I
Remember
rewatched
that incredible
RoboCop.
scene though, where they're like demoing the killer robot in the boardroom, and then it goes nuts and murders everybody. That's what I picture here.
It's pretty crazy. Let's get into it. These robots are, first off, they're not armed with guns. They're not like the DARPA dog that we correctly predicted would get a gun strapped to it at some point. They are going to carry explosive charges. So no guns, but they will have explosives. And the idea is they can use these explosives to, quote, contact, incapacitate, or disorient violent, armed, or dangerous suspects. That is per the SFPD spokesperson Allison Maxey in an earlier statement today. In an earlier statement a few days ago. And they said, these are only going to be used in extreme circumstances to save or prevent further loss of life. The officers are only going to be able to call out the kill robots after they have, quote, exhausted alternative force or de-escalation tactics. And right now, they already have robots. So they're saying the future is now. There are already like a baker's dozen ground robots that go in, and you've seen it in countless action films. They send in the bomb robot, right? And there's a guy with a really big looking controller.
Yeah.
These
giant joystick.
Right. And that's how it starts. We talked about this a little bit in our X-37B series when we talk about precedent. It starts with surveillance. It always starts with surveillance before it goes offensive. So if you are a person who is inherently skeptical of giving this sort of power to authorities, then this seems pretty dystopian. But before we go into more details, I want to pause and ask you guys, just off the information you got here. It's happening.
Yeah.
This isn't a plan now. It's approved. Does this seem like a good idea or a bad idea?
Bad idea.
Well, here's something that I feel like I have to point out. And I only know this from my video game experience. Explosions.
I love that caveat. Go on, please.
Explosions almost always come with a very often handy, but in this case, probably not so great feature, which is splash damage. You don't, they're
AKA
not really
collateral damage.
Yeah, they're not really targeted so much. So I wonder if we're talking about flashbang explosions. Are we talking about C4? I have no idea. There's so many possibilities there when you say a robot with explosives.
Yeah. No. Okay. So we've got one healthy concern, and then we've got one, I think it's a bad idea. and I feel like I don't feel like it's a hot take for us to say the concerns about this stuff are valid. We know that Oakland's police department on the other side of the bay, they were also thinking of doing something similar. The council, though, get this, the officials of the committee that voted on this, they voted in 8 in favor, 3 opposed. So only 3 people said, hey guys, I'm worried about the splashback damage.
Yeah, the other ones clearly don't play video games enough.
I know. More gamers in office. That's what we need. This also is restricted to a, quote, limited number of high-ranking officers.
So these aren't AI powered. These are remote controlled.
Yeah, correct. At this point, they're a lot more like a early UAV than they are a RoboCop level thing. They're looking at something that's specifically called a Remotech F5A. This is one that can be, it's a bomb disposal robot, and it can be weaponized. You can give it a load of shotgun shells to destroy explosives. And then there's the Kinetic Talon. This is a military robot that can be equipped with a machine gun. Again, at this point, nobody in the police department side is saying we're going to give them some semi-autos, and just see how that helps get cats out of trees. But they are going to have that possibility. This hasn't happened yet. There hasn't been a death because this literally the vote went through today as we record. And we hope by the time you hear this, there still will not have been any deaths or violence on this. But it's part of a larger pattern, I would imagine. That's what I think. There's another great Daily Beast article from yesterday, from November 29th, by Tony Ho Tran, right before this thing got passed. And in this, the journalist talks about the earlier precedents in other parts of the country. Like there are cases where cops in Dallas used a robot armed with C4 to kill a guy suspected of targeting police officers with a sniper rifle.
Oh, wow.
That was the first recorded incident of law enforcement using a robot, or cops specifically using a robot to kill a human being. But it doesn't sound like it's going to be the last.
Yeah, that's a horrible... Look, that's crazy to break down. A person suspected of targeting officers with a sniper rifle? Like, I can see in that instance why you might send a robot and take that person out, but that takes away all chance to fully prove that person was the one doing it.
Well, does it though? I mean, good detective work, was certainly, make sure you knew you were getting the right person.
But you got to stop that person, right? I agree. You got to stop that person, whatever you got to, do what you got to do. Stop that person. And this
would prevent the loss of life, for an officer. So
yeah.
For me, I'm more freaked out if this was like AI controlled and it was some algorithm making an assessment and then, meting out deadly force. But if there is an operator and it just removes the operator from the equation and they are trained, but again, we don't necessarily have the most faith in the training of law enforcement all the time, but it's certainly better than like an algorithm and some sort of like, AI generated decision-making engine.
I mean, maybe to step back, there are a couple of things here that I know some of us listening along need to hear about this. The suspect in those 2016 shootings was a guy named Micah Xavier Johnson. And when you're working in the world of journalism, you have to be careful, right? About suspected, alleged, all that stuff. Because as you said, he got killed. He was taken down by this robot. And that means that he would never go to a court of law. He did kill 5 police officers. He injured 9 other, and 2 civilians got the splashback. This was during one of the waves of protest amid the pandemic. But then here's the bigger thing. Go back further, right? This is technology that is coming home to roost. It has been active abroad since 2001. You know what I mean? These things don't come out of vacuums. And the other thing is, all technology, eventually, no matter how people try to suppress it, all technology that gets out at all and can be seen by the public becomes democratized, right? It spreads. And just like fire, it doesn't question who is using it, right? Yeah. The gun at this point does not ask the shooter if a person deserves to be shot at. And like the same way you start a fire and it doesn't say, hey, are we grilling burgers or are we burning the orphanage? Because it can't make a decision. It does what you tell it to do. And this means that whatever the good intentions are from law enforcement who are, to your point, Noel, trying to prevent the loss of officer life as well as civilian life, it means that same technology can, and in my opinion, will inevitably end up in the hands of terrorist groups.
Well, that argument is also a very interesting slippery slope that like gun lobbyists use. Right. Say it's not the gun's fault. The gun is just a tool. It's these bad people. It's these bad actors. And in order to counteract them, we need good actors with guns.
Well, that second part I would say is where you see bad faith arguments there. I mean, you could take any piece of technology and take the same thing we just said, and it would apply just the same. A microwave doesn't ask you what you're putting in it and why, and truly humans are a part of the problem, but another piece of the problem that people don't talk about is the availability of the technology. And so to go past guns and return to the idea of remote controlled killing machines, which these things are, then we know that there will be very intelligent, but not very ethical criminal organizations who will use this, right? Mm-hmm. So all armies around the world that can do this are doing it, right? Domestic law enforcement will be the next step because law enforcement is increasingly becoming militarized across the world.
Well, it's becoming the secondary market for all the toys they create.
100%, Matt, 100%. And so the next step then is going to be, in my opinion, it's going to be the dystopian future we're describing. It's going to be artificial intelligence, these things operating as some kind of judge, jury, and executioner with a cloud server, right? Like a cloud connection and a set of directives that says, think this way, if A, then B, 010, just like an autonomous car, deciding which person should be hit or injured in the accident, right? If you can't dodge both. So, and that's not a ding on autonomous car technology. It's really like nobody in these situations sees themselves as the bad guy, and they're trying to do the right thing from their perspective. But this is such a Pandora's jar. It's already been opened. The killer robots are already greenlit. They're on the way. It reminds me of, I rewatched Elysium.
Oh.
And this made me think of Elysium because there are AI law enforcement drones in Elysium. And without too many spoilers, the log line is the consequences of civilization have caught up with Earth. 90-something% of the world is poor, miserable, ridden with disease and malnutrition, kept in serf-like conditions under the thumb of the small 5% or 1% or whatever, through the use of these robo drones. And if you watch that movie, which is not, I think a lot of people don't call it the the perfect movie, but if you watch it, it's illuminating to see how encounters with those drones go. And science fiction, again, is only fiction for a certain amount of time. And speaking of time,
Ben, no, hold on. You just painted a picture in my head, and I don't think you meant to. I just envisioned something called the G-Force, and it's the Google version of that, right? But they're just drones that fly around, and they have a little speaker on them, and they just go, "Do not be evil. Do not, be evil."
Yeah.
But if you are evil,
vacate
they'll
the
get you.
area or you will be executed.
You have illegally downloaded ad blocking software into your implant, citizen.
Oh, God.
You will be shut down for your safety.
Relinquish your
In
illegal
10,
wetware.
9. Yeah, exactly. Or, that's like the next version would be a world where, like in Cyberpunk, where if you lose your job, then the cybernetics that have been installed in you can get shut down as well. I started playing Cyberpunk.
I need to pick that back up.
I thought did it get fixed?
You playing dong in or dong out?
Oh, it's always dong out. Come on.
Cool.
It's like Gattaca rules. I don't save stuff for the swim back. But speaking of getting back to you folks, we're going to pause for word from our sponsors, give you a chance to see what your local law is saying about killer robots, and we'll be back with one more piece of strange news.
And we've returned. And I'm going to start this one off with a little song. Black hole sun, won't you come and shine with the light of 1,000 trillion suns to wash away the rain? That's a thing that was discovered by, the Zwicky Transient Facility in California, which this past February, according to a fabulous article on Motherboard, was experiencing some outages and then went back online. And right as it went back online, it spotted an eruption of light and energy far, far, far away that was absolutely unprecedented. So the astronomers there, went on their Slack, because astronomers apparently use Slack as well. And somebody said something like, "Are we restarting with a bang?" Igor Andreoni, an astronomer at the University of Maryland, who participates in this facility's research. Yeah, it's pretty wild. They saw what essentially was a black hole related gravitational wave acceleration, let's call it. And I'm no black hole scientist here, and I'm relying heavily on this Becky Ferriera article on Motherboard. But this is wild. And the headline, I have to say, though, it made me think it was much more of an end of the world scenario than it actually is. Scientists spot black hole energy beam as bright as 1,000 trillion suns, and here's the kicker, pointed at Earth. And the fact that it was pointed at Earth is what made it visible and what made them able to kind of hone in on it. And like a lot of astrological discoveries, it was kind of an accident. So let's see. Here's a quote. "Engineers worked without stopping, weekends included, day and night, to make the camera operational again. And literally the first night it was operational, there was this detection." Andreoni, who I mentioned, and also Michael Coughlin, who's an astronomer at the University of Minnesota, reported this, I guess you could call it an anomaly. Let's call it a mysterious flash, like Motherboard did. So what it actually was an incredibly powerful beam of energy, an energetic jet made of ultra-fast particles, and like the headline said, pointed at Earth. And it was fueled by a black hole eating star, which is scary sounding, that is billions of light years away from our planet. So we don't necessarily have to worry about getting fried by this ultra beam energy particle field yet. But apparently this type of cosmic, anomaly or phenomenon, I guess, is what's called a tidal disruption event, or TDE. And it's actually got a name, because they name all these kinds of things. Not particularly sexy, but it's AT2022 CMC. And they're describing it as the furthest jetted TDE discovered so far, and the only one for which it was possible to observe a complex optical light curve that transitions from a fast red component into a blue plateau. And they published this study in the journal Nature, in addition to a companion study that was published in Nature Astronomy at the same time, and gave kind of a detailed breakdown of how such a powerful beam like this can be birthed. It's really fascinating. There's some other great quotes from this article. They describe it as reaffirming the necessity to have truly eyes wide open searches of these vastly growing astronomical data sets that we have. And it's a source we didn't really think hard about until it was discovered because it's so rare. This is from Andreoni. It's not quite the first thing you think about, an event that is detected once every 10 years, if that, and that has never been discovered before in the optical wavelengths. In other words, wavelengths that you can actually see. This is unprecedented. So,
can I just jump in here really fast,
please.
Noel? We talk about the distances in space, and that's one of the major reasons why, even though statistically there's other life in the universe, we probably won't ever encounter it, right? It's because of that distance. And, we think about the speed of light and how ridiculously fast that is, but then how much distance that light has to travel to actually reach the Earth.
Right.
It's crazy to think that this thing we're observing happened only a couple billion years after the universe was formed. At least that's the theory.
That's right.
It's 8.5 billion light years away.
Correct.
But then
black hole from Earth.
So then it's just traveling. That light has been traveling for billions of years towards the Earth. We catch it just in this chance happening when this thing turns back on. My mind goes to then all the light that's coming off of, our star and stars near us in where the universe is, and then that light traveling back in the other direction. And just what time, I'm sorry, you're blowing my mind. I'm not high, but I'm just thinking about time in the sense of distance and light, and it is kind of hurting me a little bit.
It's such a cool thing, isn't it? Like I find that idea can take people in one of two philosophical directions. It can be immensely depressing, or it can be immensely inspiring. As a matter of fact, three directions, because it can be both. It's a nice mixture of some kind of metacosmic sonder for anybody who likes the Dictionary of Uncounted Sorrows or whatever it's called, Counted Sorrows. I can't remember. But the idea reminds me of, like, imagine you are in the largest train station ever, a crowded airport, right? The largest one that could ever exist. And somehow, way across the terminal, you make eye contact, right? With someone you've never met, never see again. And it's really intense, and it's just for a second, and it changes your life, like that's a poetic
so awesome.
way. It's kind of poetic, right? And that's happened to people. But the thing that really, I think, is inspiring, if this saves you from nihilism and a feeling of being lost in the universe, Noel, I think you hit on the most important part, and I'm so glad you mentioned this, where these astronomers are saying to the layfolk, you don't understand what an amazing coincidence this is. We just happened to be at the right place at the right time when this thing happened to have pointed this, and the light happened to be at the right speed. I mean, there is so much out there to see, and human beings, correct me if I'm wrong on this, Noel, but I think astronomers still have we have very little visibility, right, of the visible universe, like what the satellites can cover.
Yeah, that's my understanding as well. And another thing Andreoni said was how it tells us about the time scale of the formation of the jet as compared to the disk of material around the black hole that accretes and keeps pumping out energy that we can observe. In other words, it really tells us about the environment surrounding this black hole. So it's almost like a cosmic ice core or something, like it's a way of understanding something that we could never possibly reach and understanding like kind of cosmic history and the formation of even our universe, and life as we know it, perhaps. I think that whole little inside astronomer joke on Slack about are we restarting with a bang? I think that's sort of a reference to the Big Bang thing. Maybe I'm misreading that, but that's my understanding.
100%. I mean, really, since we're going through some cosmic emotions here for people who are emotive, think about this. You could also look at this as a shot across the bow, because what if that was a gamma ray burst instead?
Yeah.
And it did reach us and it fried all of our stuff, right?
It would, fry all of the people and all of their stuff. It would fundamentally change Earth's atmosphere. It's one of those extinction level events. I think it was, did it cause I wonder if it caused one of the great extinctions. But anyway, what I'm saying is that's something that's also very difficult to predict because of the size of the universe versus the size of Earth, our cute little Kauai rock orbiting our cute little Kauai sun. It's unlikely that these things will hit us, but it's also impossible to predict it.
Well, and I haven't read the actual studies, but I have noticed, and you probably will notice this as well, scientists and astronomers and the like, they don't really speak in like apocalyptic doomsday terms usually.
No.
They're very measured, in the way they describe these things. So, Ben, you pointed something out that really isn't even referenced in any of the quotes from these folks. But then they kind of end the article, the Vice article, with one last quote from one of these lead astronomers. We just need to observe more and deeper. I think we'll get much closer to understanding why they're so rare and the astrophysics of these events. So in other words, like, we need to pay attention to this stuff because it could be a bad thing one time, and the fact that this happened and that we caught it means that there are other things like this that could, who knows, it's a little bit mind-boggling.
Guys, I'm just learning about blazars or blazers, BLAZARS.
Like hyper pop DJ or something. Blazar.
It's like a bad guy in the new Thor movies.
Blazar. It's something trademarked by Chef Blaze. We know him. We love him.
Yeah.
These things are powerful light beams, similar to what you're talking about here in this story, Noel. But there's another Vice article written by Becky that we're mentioning here. I think you wrote the article you were talking about, and she's just talking about these things. I don't understand them yet, but they look incredible. It looks like Mass Effect to me.
They also just the name. It's got a lot of gravity to. Yeah, gravity. It's a cool name. Blazars. Yeah. Way cooler than pulsars.
And it's strange because we've got some astronomers in the crowd with us today, and we'd love to hear your take on this stuff, especially that point about maybe being alarmist, right, or in any way hyperbolic. We want to be very measured as well when we talk about these sorts of events, these movements in the ancient heavens. One line also, I was just looking at this as we were talking about it. One line stood out to me from MIT News. They had a statement where they were talking about how there's one supermassive black hole per galaxy, and they form very quickly after what humans call the universe starts. And then this guy says, Matteo Lucchini says, that tells us they feed very fast, though we don't know how that feeding process works.
Feeding.
Exactly. And I mean, that's not scientifically inaccurate, but it also immediately makes my mind go to eldritch places when I think, what are these, just like the spirited away, no face, hungry boys of space?
Eater of worlds. That's what I think of.
Love it. Yeah.
I don't know. It feels like they're just some kind of, I don't know. Think about it as a computer. It's something, it's like the recycling bin. That's what the supermassive black holes are. That's where the trash goes, and it gets turned into other materials to be repurposed in the next simulated thing.
And it's the same as the gun argument. It's like the fire argument. It doesn't differentiate. It just is. And it is a greater energy and a greater power than anything in its wake, in its path. and it's just going to do what it do and just pass right through it, you know?
There are no vegan black holes, right? There are no allergens or dietary restrictions for black hole.
It's just particles, man. It's just energy and light.
Universe is an all-you-can-eat buffet.
God.
It is indeed. Well, let's put a pin in this one for now.
Woo!
And, yeah. I mean,
Sweet dreams, everybody. Sweet dreams out there in the ink. I can't wait till we go to space. You know, it's no, Matt, it reminds me of those questions where people would say, would you rather fight one horse-sized duck or 100, duck-sized horses, things like that, right? Mm-hmm. What are people going to do to try to deal with a black hole when one of these things finally becomes not just some distant, mysterious, observable phenomenon?
Yeah, what are we going to do, CERN? What are we going to do? No, I'm just joking.
Someone get on that. We would solve it, but we're busy podcasting.
We'll get to it after we do the next episode.
Yeah. No. Good note. I guess we'll call it there. So we've gone from we've gone all the way from your computer and your taxes to the edges of ancient space. And thank you for taking this ride with us. We can't wait to get back to it. We've been having a little bit of a space theme in recent conversations, and maybe that will continue in the future. In the meantime, we can't wait to hear what everybody else thinks about this. Astronomers in the audience, please be kind.
Yeah, we're sorry. We're
do
sorry.
Our best. You can
wait. Hold on.
What?
Is Rage Cage a Tenacious D reference?
Yes, it is. Yeah, I was going to bring that up. Yeah, of course it is.
Okay. I don't know why that just hit, but there we go. Okay,
it's different. But yeah, if you want to do those things, for us or against us, astrologically. You can find us on the internet. We are Conspiracy Stuff on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. Conspiracy Stuff Show on Instagram.
That's right. We have a phone number that you can call, 1-833-STDWYTK. It's a voicemail system. Leave your name, which in this case is not your real name. It's a moniker. We don't care what it is. Just make it awesome. We can't wait to hear what you call yourself. You got 3 minutes to talk, and within that 3 minutes, let us know if we can use your name and voice on one of our listener mail episodes. If you don't like talking on the phone to anybody, we get it. That's totally fine. You can instead send us a good old-fashioned email. We are
conspiracy@iHeartRadio.com.
Stuff They Don't Want You to Know is a production of iHeartRadio. For more podcasts from iHeartRadio, visit the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your favorite shows.